Thank you very much, everyone. It's great you've all got so much to talk about. So, some of you that were here last year will remember we did something a bit similar like this, and I think it's interesting to have the opportunity to, cross party lines, if you like, and speak to your opposite numbers, even if they're not specifically your opposite numbers. Some of you will be from very large universities. Some of you will be from very small universities. The structure and the resources availability, the distance, if you like, conceptually and physically between the Commons Office and the research impact teams will vary widely. But I hope this exercise is interesting and useful to, hash out those discussions, those arguments, to think about the kind of things that you can do better together and how you might go about, essentially changing the status quo and changing up a gear and doing things differently in order to get a different outcome. So we had, remind me, 5 groups, possibly 6 groups. So what I'd like to do is just go around. We've got about 20 minutes. I won't keep you any longer than that. If we can just go around and maybe just have sort of the top sort of learnings or thinkings or, what kind of outcomes or practical steps that you identified would be the sorts of things that you thought were important. So can I have a chief spokesman? I'm just going to go from left to right. So can we have a chief spokesman or indeed woman from the group that was over here? I think, was that yours? Give us your top sort of findings, the things that you thought were most important, the practical things that you could put into effect.
I think we were discussing how useful it can be to have regular conversations between a research impact team, particularly those responsible for a particular discipline, and and communications folks. Sometimes perhaps people in the communications team might see research projects towards the end when you're kind of at that finding stage, and perhaps the impact team are seeing them much earlier when you're kind of applying to do the research or applying to do the impact activity. So we see them at different stages of the research cycle, so it's really good and beneficial for all to have those chats. We think that time and resources just get in the way, and I think we all recognise that it's useful to do so. And we kind of took a practical action to seek out our counterparts a bit more.
Yeah, very straightforward and no doubt effective. I think it may have been from your group that I overheard the line, help academics to understand they can't just show up 24 hours before they want something, and that they need to approach us much earlier so that we can do more with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is not actually on. Oh, it is on. Okay. There was a second group that was in the story studio in the far room. Who have we got from there? There we go. That's there we go. Great stuff. Talk us through it.
So we talked a lot about the challenges. We all had a good moan. But what I think we identified is that part of the struggles that lots of us face are similar across both comms and impact, about finding those stories, getting them told in the right way and encouraging that, but also every institution's process and silo for where the impact lives and where the comms lives are different. Even sort of, next door county-wise, they're all different. So we talked about how comms will try harder with ref case studies, really thinking about putting that in the cycle or thinking about it. And, sometimes it does get lost because you're working at much quicker pace than impact people. So sort of a bit of a resolution there, and identifying where comms, can help with that. We were talking about how actually comms people can really be helpful for writing better case studies, especially if it's kind of come a bit more directly from the academics themselves. There's a skill set there that we can help provide. Media isn't impact in itself, but it is a pathway to impact. So obviously that shouldn't be left behind in terms of how powerful it is, and it's often like an igniting factor for ongoing impact. Make follow-up happen by withholding analytics from researchers. So naming no names, there is an institution that decided to do that in order to facilitate follow-up, to say, well, we'll tell you how good it is as long as you come back and sit with us and tell you how you're getting on so we can follow up. And apparently there's a really good platform called Released, which is good for getting those analytics and making them look pretty so that you have something to present. And finally, we talked about how ECRs are probably maybe a bit of a solution to lots of these problems, is that you can cultivate their skill set earlier on and harness their enthusiasm, and also how hard all of it is without an institutional strategy at some levels, and how often we just have to make our own strategies because otherwise we don't get told anything.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, what's your top line there?
Oh, it says share TikTok videos on LinkedIn, because someone was telling us a good story about how, this lady was saying that actually sharing a TikTok video really worked on LinkedIn in terms of engagement and response, and also follow-up, because and that was a surprise to a lot of us. So maybe that's something that that kind of cross-platform doesn't become so siloed. We realise that people are human on every platform.
Even on LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you very much. Can I just say, if Amy Mollett was here, our speaker who couldn't make it from Cambridge, she said last year that LinkedIn, she saw on LinkedIn the fastest growth of users than any other social media channel. So as people have migrated away from Twitter because they find it obnoxious, they've moved away from Facebook because it's Facebook, and they've ended up finding new channels. And LinkedIn, which is still awful, but it's less awful than it used to be. And so that's become a real growth area. So actually there's some real truth in that. And yeah, why not share TikTok videos on LinkedIn, and indeed other things besides. And lastly, I would just say that the conversation, of course, offers great analytics for institutions and for authors. And I love the idea of withholding the stats until they come back with feedback. I think that's a great idea. Difficult to make that one happen, but I love it. Thank you very much. Who was the group that was in the small room here? Hello. Great, thank you. Come collect that.
So I'll just draw out a couple of sort of actionable areas, which hopefully will be useful. Just to say, a lot of these good ideas came from Leeds University, so go Leeds. So the first was about help with the comms team helping with strategies for bids, actually. So the impact team often do that. They support on putting together the impact strategy around funding bids, but actually involving the comms team in thinking about the communication strategy for those projects would be really, really valuable as well, and that is happening in pockets. And then the second thing was around impact managers working more closely with comm teams to feed impact threads that are going to form the overarching impact case studies, so that they can start to put together comms pieces around those pieces of research. So being quite strategic about the research that the comms team is promoting, so it relates to the formulation of impact case studies. And something that just occurred to me when the last group were talking about TikTok was the comms team could probably also advise on the best method for communicating that research as well, whether it's a video, whether it's a press release, etc. So I think those three things are probably quite easy to implement and straightforward, presuming you get support from the institution.
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly so. That's literally what comms people do, isn't it? So you need to bring those skills to bear earlier in the proceedings. Fantastic. Where have we got to now? So the people that were in the forum, in the coffee room.
We collectively as a group didn't really understand what the question we were being asked was. So we sort of just chatted for a while and troubleshooted each other's issues. So we talked a bit about how you make a case study or how you find the impact of something when the researchers don't believe their work has impact. So if it's like very basic science, not that they don't believe in themselves, but if they think it's very basic science and they can't see how it applies to people. So we talked a bit about how you can make impact in other ways. It doesn't have to be policy change. It could be collaboration with artists that then is an exhibit that elicits emotions from the local people, that kind of thing. And also to have a look at when they asked for the money, what did they say they were going to do with the money, to give an idea of what the impact could be. I'm sure I've missed a few things.
Very good. If you look at the, it's probably not a very easy document to find anymore, but I will dig it up and I'll send you all the link because I thought it was fascinating. It's a very exhausting document, which is guidance to REF 2029, as was produced some years ago. And it has 10 12 pages of a near exhaustive list of things that constitute impact. Because it's the classic thing that people ask me. I go and do a training session and they say, I don't make widgets, I don't discover planets, I don't improve the health outcomes of small children. I study 19th century French literature, or, where the hell is my impact? And of course, if you have a very narrow definition of impact, then you're never going to see it. But what this document showed me was the many, and I think it's evolved since Ref 2014, because this point has been made ad nauseam. Impact can take many forms. It doesn't have to be purely economic or based on sort of hard science type outcomes. It can be changes of opinions. It can be making specific groups more aware of problems. It can be changing perspectives. It can be all sorts of things. And this document is really good because it kind of conjures up all these different things that impact could be in a way that makes sense to arts, humanities, and social sciences. So I think that's a very fair problem to get your teeth into because it's not obvious. Thank you. The people who are in the room next to on the right there, I think there's a final group. Someone over here? Oh yes, you're right, it's 2 final groups. So the penultimate group, which was the group in the small room to the right. I think there we go, brilliant. There you go. If you give that to Jackie. Oh, there you go. I know.
So we kind of split into 3 groups within our small group, and I was only one of those groups. We were lucky enough to have Dawn with us, so spent most of the time just firing questions at her. I think one of the main thing that we came up with was that there could be some better consolidation of the tools that we all use. So in the comms team, we have a number of analytics tools that we use, like video meltwater, that kind of thing. And I think some of the data that we produce from that could be better used by our impact teams, but equally our impact teams use tools like Pure to increasingly log impact on that in ways which could also be useful to the comms team. So I think some exploration around that might be useful. And then either of the other 2 groups want to add anything from that room? Take that as a no.
Thank you very much. It's such a. I really can't emphasise that enough. I mean, if there is anyone here, there must be surely people here who are colleagues from Ref Impact, people who probably have never been to a conversation event before, who probably have never had any contact with us before. I need you to come and talk to me or email me and say, I would like access to the conversations analytics, just like your comms team colleagues have. There's no reason why you can't have it too. The fact that you don't have it, the fact that we have not yet spoken, the fact that you haven't had anything to do with the conversation and yet you've been members for years is an outrage. So yeah, we absolutely need to share the tools we have and share the knowledge we have and our ability to interpret and analyse that data between each other. Because if it can be useful to 2 sets of people, why not share that across teams? So really good point. Thank you. Jackie. Last but not least.
Okay, so in our group, one of the things that struck me as we all talked about what we did at our institutions was that there seems to be more examples than certainly than I picked up on last year about where you've got kind of bridging roles, particularly in larger universities. For example, policy roles where you've got 1 foot in comms and 1 foot in impact. And I thought that was a really interesting opportunity to be able to sort of work more closely together. And also an example of where you had some impact and comms people actually working in the same team, which again, I didn't, obviously it's not scientific, but I don't remember hearing anything about that last year. And so maybe there's kind of more of that kind of joined up working. We also talked about the need to effectively to kind of improve comms sort of literacy and understanding amongst colleagues. It was that kind of idea of somebody turning up with a video and saying, can you promote this for me, without really having an idea of, well, who do they want to target, how best to communicate, what are the comms preferences of their audience and so on. And in many ways, that's very similar to when you, as an impact person, when you're working with people around impact, I run stakeholder analysis kind of workshops where you're doing exactly that when you're saying who is this relevant to, why are they going to be interested, what's the best way to communicate with them and things. And so that actually led us to think that actually you could actually co-deliver some workshops around that, comms and impact impact people could co-deliver workshops, and it certainly made me think I never would have thought of inviting comms people to co-deliver those workshops with me, but I think I will now. So that was a potential sort of action. There was also some kind of sense that there was more potential for working together for REF at an earlier stage, whether that's around boosting impact or support with kind of giving feedback on the developing case studies and things, as there's some discussion of the timing of that. And finally, there was another suggestion about, somebody said about their library putting on induction sessions where comms people were invited to the induction sessions for new staff. And actually, I thought that was quite interesting as well, that if library people did that, then you could actually invite comms people and impact people, and actually, you know, both contribute to that and look at the crossover again.
I feel like library people are a whole unknown quantity. Do I need to organise another conference? Thank you very much, Jackie. And yeah, I mean, that classic thing about getting involved so much earlier in the cycle. Do you know what you were saying about co-delivering and you know, the classic sort of basic starting point of impact people explaining what impact is to comms people and comms people explaining what comms is to impact people. That feels like, following our discussion about policymakers, you need a two sides max brief. That's what you need. 2 sides, clear, succinct, to the point. You know, each of you make one and swap it, and then you've got your briefing document to base the rest of your relationship on.
Yeah, and then it's then passing that message on to the colleagues who we support, isn't it? Because I think because there's so much overlap, I think probably comms people often have quite a good understanding of what the impact people are trying to do, and vice versa. But actually, it's kind of the potential to increase that understanding with our colleagues as well. Yeah. And I think working together to do that could work quite well.
Love it. So, that brings us to the end of another exchange. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. I hope the sessions earlier today were informative. Certainly from this workshop we've just done, you know, you've got a whole bunch of ideas there that are practical, actionable, and although there's been a few sideways references to the need for institutional support, we all know that's for the birds. Just get on with it. You know, I expect you all to be coming back here next year, and you'll be presenting all the things you've done in the intervening 12 months. If you go to menti.com on your phones right now, you can type in that code, which will bring you up this page. I'd love to hear your feedback, please, on the day, what it was, what it wasn't, what you hoped for, what you got. Your feedback helps improve the next one. But it remains to me to thank all of our speakers, even those that are no longer here. And indeed all of you for coming, including those who are no longer here. Please, give your all selves and our speakers a big round of applause.